All right. Well, hello, everybody, and thanks for joining on time. We're excited to go over the MongoDB story on how to personalize and create a differentiated website experience. We'll give folks some time to join, and so in the meantime, just for like a couple minutes, I'll be interested in some hot takes from our panelists here today on how the tech scene has been evolving this year. I think there's like a lot of like really interesting acquisitions that happen both on the MarTech side and on the just overall like SaaS side. I'm curious like what your take is from your vantage point on what's going to happen. Are we going to see more consolidation in 2021 or kind of the rise to power of some individual solutions?
It's a very hot topic right now, Francis. I think we've had some discussions on our team about what we're seeing and which partners too might end up becoming consolidating with other partners, and we're expecting a few more to come, but also what you're describing too, it's a good opportunity right now to continue growing your business and brand. And so I think that's the approach we're taking at Intercom, is still trying to really double down on our efforts. So I think there's gonna be a split. My rumors are there's a few more big ones coming right in the next couple months while the market climate is so strong. But then I think there'll be a little bit of a slowdown too, as we see what political changes in the U.S. might take effect and impact things. I don't know, Ashley or Gabriel, what are your teams thinking about, or are you individually seeing?
We did start to see a lot of consolidation, a lot of exits recently. But I think you just hit the nail on the head. The world is not the same place that it was a year ago, from like public health to politics to many, many other things. So I think, maybe the right answer is just integrate with everyone so that no matter what happens, you're set up for success.
Yeah, I would love to see more consolidation, because on the other side, having so many different softwares to integrate with is always a challenge. So if people could merge and kind of build solutions that are just more comprehensive, it would help a lot on our day-to-day. So I would love to see a little bit more consolidation, but good consolidation that makes sense and make the products evolve, and not the consolidation that is just like a simple merge that doesn't really have effect or doesn't really impact the products or the roadmap. But let's see how it goes. I think it's just like an interesting dynamic that is starting to pop up in the market.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting. I know, like, browsing through some of the questions that people sent ahead of the webinar, there were a lot of questions around like what tech stack you recommend and like how to think about it from the vantage point of, a company like MongoDB, where you want to make investments into tech that you believe is going to be there for the long time, versus like when you're at a startup where it's more about like pick a solution that works really well for today and that you're probably going to scale up. There's a chance that you'll scale out of that product, so it doesn't matter as much. So I think that's where a lot of folks were asking questions around that, because I think it's highly relevant when you're thinking of building this like website experience, like core to your brand and to your marketing. And it's important to make, I think, the right choices from a tech standpoint. So that to me will be the intro actually to talking about the awesome folks that we have here, because I do believe, when we're thinking about running this to talk about Mongo, I think like Clearbit and Intercom are two really awesome companies that I believe are there for the long run, and I think are a core part of any scalable tech stack. And I think Gabriel is going to probably talk a little bit about that and like some of the challenges at MongoDB and why you need solutions like these. But I think we've given enough time for folks to join. So without further ado, the typical housekeeping slide. So there will be a recording. The recording will actually be the same link as what you use to join the webinar right now. So it'll be super straightforward to do that. We'll do a quick intro for the speakers. Then we'll go over the actual content. Please feel free to add any questions you might have through Livestorm, and we'll pick those questions as we go. If there's anything that's relevant to what we're talking about, we'll kind of like stop and address the question. And then at the end, we'll hopefully have some time for a deeper Q&A. So yeah, that's all Livestorm's pretty straightforward. So hopefully you'll be able to ask questions in there. So about the people today, I'm Francis, and I am the co-founder at Mad Kudu. Have been working with the awesome folks that we have on the call here today. And yeah, we'll be moderating as much as possible, but mostly we'll let the team here talk about their experience. So Gabriel, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Gabriel. I lead the go-to-market operations team at MongoDB. That's a team that encompasses multiple areas underneath it. The more common are marketing ops, web, and analytics, so marketing analytics. So very happy to be here with this stellar team.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tara Larson from the Intercom team. Been at Intercom for about 3 years in various growth roles, currently leading our go-to-market partnerships with our fabulous app partners. We have over 250 integration partners in our ecosystem, and I'm fortunate to work with Francis and Ashley regularly to help our customers like MongoDB integrate their tech stack for pretty dramatic results. So excited for this discussion.
Thanks, Tara. My name is Ashley Taylor. I lead the partnerships team at Clearbit. I've been here about 2.5 years. Leading partnerships at Clearbit means a lot of things, but ultimately I work to make sure that our integrations, like those that we have with Mad Kudu and with Intercom, are built to support the success of our customers like MongoDB. So thank you for having me today, and thank you all for coming.
Awesome. Well, then let's get started. I think the first thing we want to do to get like a sense for where each of you attending are at is kind of run a quick poll to understand how much personalization are you doing today on your website. So feel free to use the poll to in that tab to give us a sense. Right now, it's kind of a 50-50, but so we'll be curious to monitor that. And as people keep on answering, I think that the part that that is going to be critical in what we discussed today is, I think, when we talk about companies like MongoDB, again, like one of the elements that's really critical to understand is that like the challenges that a company like Mongo has are not like typical challenges that maybe a startup or even like early stage scale-ups kind of face. We're talking about like companies that have, huge amounts of traffic and more importantly, traffic that is very diverse, right? So you have your kind of solopreneur, your developer trying to just like, spin up a Mongo database somewhere. And on the flip side, you have like Fortune 100 CIOs who are coming to website to determine like if MongoDB can be a core part of their stack. And the messaging has to be very different for these folks, and not just the messaging, like overall the customer journey has to be very different. And that's why you need to, break down all these different journeys accordingly. And so what's interesting, it seems like in the audience, we're probably in like it seems like a tie, like 50-50 of people personalizing their websites and people not personalizing it. It seems like slight edge on the personalization. And what I mean by personalization, I think in this case, maybe goes a little bit beyond what I think a lot of folks think about. Like if we think about ABM, like there's the idea of like you have a landing page that's like specific to a customer and you'll have their logo somewhere. You'll talk about what integrations they use, which is like a very cool use case, by the way, for Clearbit that we'll talk about later. But I think more than that, there's really this idea of understanding for each and every visitor that's hitting your website, what is the journey that's going to bring them to success with the least amount of friction. And this is where, again, we go into this idea that for a company like Mongo, there's really like a strong self-serve funnel where you have people who just want to come in, they want to experience the product, they know what they're going to do with it. And what they really need to be able to do is sign up for the product, use it, and then if they have a need to go for a paid tier, they can upgrade to the paid tier. And then on the complete flip side, you're going to have like this more ABM type of initiative where you're going after your Fortune 100 companies where you have to identify which are the accounts that you're targeting, and then you have like field marketing, which today is like a different kind of field to be in, but trying to run different campaigns to get these accounts to engage with your product. content first, then at some point, hopefully was the product, and like kind of like grow into a land and expand motion to close these big enterprise tiers, and like everything in the middle, from like closing these kind of like transactional deals on the SMB side to like the more commercial aspect when you're in the like mid-range kind of ACV. And again, like each of these funnels have a different approach to selling, a different approach to marketing, a different set of needs in the funnel. And that's where being able to differentiate across the board is really critical. And there's kind of like three big components, which again is why we're so excited to have Intercom and Clearbit today, is that there's one element which is really about identifying who people are, to even like get a sense of like, what do we know about these folks? And that's where like Clearbit and tools like MathKudu together are really going to do a good job of trying to identify who these people are. Then you can classify them to determine what is the best kind of funnel to put them in, where kind of MathKudu fits into the picture. And then at the end, you want to have like a good execution tool like an Intercom that actually supports very different kind of touch points and funnels, where it's not just going to be a live chat that we're pushing in your face. It can be a live chat, it can be support, it can be, you know, sending you to documentation so that you're able to actually create this differentiated experience and not just kind of like blast a sales message to everyone, which again would be very detrimental to an experience like a MongoDB. So that's kind of setting the stage at the, I guess, like the really high level and more theoretical. And now I'll hand it over to Tara to maybe talk a little bit more about like how Intercom fits into this picture in more detail.
Thanks, Francis. Yeah, so when we're thinking about differentiating your website experience, and I think it's great that there are many of you here who already do that and many of you who don't. There's one trend over the last decade that's really important to keep top of mind. We're finding that more than half of buyers are more likely to buy from a business that they can message. And that kind of matches some of the behaviors that we're seeing in our personal lives over the last decade. We all adopted using WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger and other forms of chat for communication. So part of that is preference and ease of use, but there's also something really unique that messaging allows and signals to your customers. So as you can see in the GIF, it creates a more dynamic, interactive experience that Francis was mentioning. You can actually customize in very different ways towards the needs of your visitors, whether they're a buyer or a customer. And the other thing too is it also signals that you're available and you care about your customers. And so when buyers are looking at your website and thinking about who to purchase from, just having that symbolic ability and in some ways to know that you can get the help you need and that you're a customer-centric business, that makes a really big difference. And we're seeing that in the data in terms of where people are putting their money and making their decisions. So when you go to the next slide here, what we start to think about is if you want to differentiate your website, you need to understand the needs of your visitors and who those users are. And they come to your website for different reasons at different times during their customer life cycle. And the ability to have technology help interact and guide them through that experience is really powerful, but you need to just think about how you segment them. So some users are going to be coming to your website just to learn. They're browsing, maybe they heard about your business from a friend or saw you on a different website, and their needs are to collect information. And that's where thinking kind of with your marketing cap of how do you greet them, help them navigate your site to find the information they need is the best way that you can help them. There are other users though who are coming with a more specific interest in evaluating your company. And those are the ones that are really hot prospects for your sales team, and they're time sensitive. When you're making a buying decision, you're looking for information and help now and trying to evaluate the experience that you'll have as a customer. So whether that's on the homepage and identifying the right attributes that could make them a good fit customer, or seeing that they're on your pricing page or other areas, you want to speak to those users differently. If they're a good fit customer, give them availability to book meetings with your sales team and really kind of accelerate that process. And then the last kind of main category, of course, there are subcategories to all of these, would be those visitors that are coming for support. They could be existing customers today. And if you hit them with an offer to purchase, it'll be really disorienting and and not personalized at all. And that's not going to be consistent with the strategy you're trying to deploy. And it also won't be cost effective for your team. So thinking about the different visitor types and mapping it to those funnels that Francis was describing earlier really is going to help your customers, but also make it a lot easier for your team to be efficient and to scale. So just the more that you know upfront, the better you can do this. And so I'll pass it over to Ashley to share some insights on how we think about that both at Intercom and Clearbit, but also for all of our customers.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tara. Before I dive right in on talking through the best practices for engaging with website visitors, I'll share just a little bit of background in case today is the first time that you've ever heard about Clearbit. We provide full, robust B2B profiles with accurate and real-time firmographic, technographic data with APIs that integrate just about anywhere. So we want to empower your sales, marketing, product teams to be more productive. So as you think about the three categories that Tara just talked through, imagine if you could do that before a visitor actually identifies themselves. Even before a website visitor fills out a lead form or identifies themselves in a chat or interacts with anything else on your site. Enriching the IP address to a full company level firmographic profile allows everything that Tara just shared, again, before they identify themselves. It empowers you to immediately understand what a company that they represent and what they may be looking for. If it's a current customer looking for support, great. Immediately connect them with the right account manager. If it's a lead or a target account, you can send relevant case studies by industry, or you can surface logos that are appropriate for their company size. You can even route that conversation to the correct rep or team to make the most of it. Whether in your Intercom messages, your Mad Kudu lead scoring, or many other tools, understanding not just who your anonymous visitors are, but the full, robust, complete profile about them will allow you to differentiate your website experience to them, often without it even being obvious that you're doing it.
Awesome. And I know like one of the questions that actually I think is relevant to answer, because I think it's like spot on, was the in part was the Intercom stack. Like there's a question of, do you run like the personalization client side, or do you have to do server side rendering? I think part of the interest of using tools like Clearbit, Matkudu is that they're of the generation of tools that are API based, which means that you can run them client side. Of course, like there's still value in doing like some server side rendering, but the good aspect there is that like these tools can communicate with Intercom in real time to say, well, now that we've obtained this information, we're actually going to be able to change the journey and the different path in the tool. And that's like one of the things that Gabriel will talk about a little bit in more detail. There's like some broader questions that we might or might not cover around like how you actually change like the CTAs and changing things like that based on the scores. I think Clearbit has like a cool article on their blog where they talk about how they do that. I believe it's still there, but worst case scenario is something that we can follow up on with because it is experimentation that we've done in the past. And I would say like typically start client side, because like when you start trying to do like server side and you have to like ping before your Nginx kind of loads, it's a lot more complicated. So starting client side is fairly straightforward, and that's where like the tech stack is going to be critical to be able to do that.
We have a few pieces of content on our blog that fit the description. I think I found the one that you were talking about, so I'll post that in the chat right now.
Awesome, thank you. Cool, and maybe like to end kind of the section on more, I guess, of the vendors talking, but one of the frameworks I like to use and to get people to think about is like when you're designing kind of these different experiences, especially when it comes to live chat, I think it's really critical to understand what is going to be the optimal CTA that you want to offer to people based on the classification that you were able to do. And so this is kind of just like I guess like a boilerplate kind of template that I would recommend everyone think about and use to understand when someone's coming to my website, what do I need to understand about them to determine what's the best kind of CTA to push, and who should be in charge of then dealing with the actual action that you're calling for, right? In some cases, it's something like fully automated. We're just like pushing them to, book a ticket, register for a webinar, whatever. In some cases, you actually, they want to interact with your success team. And in some cases, they might want to talk to a live agent. I think that's the example that Tara was saying, when someone is saying, hey, like, I'd like to understand, the differences between the pro and the premium single or whatever kind of plans. That's where you can decide, like, should I push that to self-serve or should I have a rep talk to them? And based on the complexity of your product and the differences between tiers, that's where then you have to make the decision of, like, is this a question that actually is relevant to have someone book a time for versus having them be sent to a knowledge base article that will talk about the different plans. So anyway, I think this is like a good framework that kind of anchors a little bit of the conversation that we're going to have with Gabriel, where again, like, there's this strong need to separate these different funnels and understanding who should go down the path of a more self-serve journey versus a more sales-heavy journey. So on that note, Gabriel, I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Francis. Just to introduce and level set everyone. So MongoDB is a company that offers document-based distributed database that is able to handle data for any type of application. So it's really a general purpose database that you can download or you can use on the cloud, and you can build your applications on top of it. It's a company that was founded in 2007, a public company now, has more than 125 million downloads of our database, more than 2,000 people, and has complexities of a big company. So we have people in more than 100 countries, we have multiple languages, we have a sales team of more than 300 members, what adds a lot of complexity to the environment we're dealing with. So always think, whenever you are seeing the recommendations or the path that we decided to take for some of those things, as a maturity level. You'll start in a small startup, you do integrations that are simpler, you are going to be doing personalization at a simpler level, but it's important that you understand how that grows and how that can be done, even at a big company level, or like a company that has a bigger audience, or like a more mature product. Go back one, yeah. So MongoDB has mainly 3 offers in the market. We have other offers, we have multiple products, but I think it's important that people, for the context of this conversation, understand the 3 key groups that we have. So the first product we have, and this is where we started initially, was a community version of our MongoDB database. It's free, it's open, it's a database for everyone. And our recommendation today is that you use that to test it locally and to learn about MongoDB, to learn the language, to learn the database and see all its features and its advantages in comparison to more traditional databases like SQL databases and so on. The second group that we have there is the MongoDB Atlas. This is our cloud version, our biggest product, and the product that we have been kind of exposing to the market as the easiest way to deploy MongoDB and to kind of build your application directly. So there we have a freemium model, so where you can test the product for free up to a certain level, and then as you start using the product, you can self-serve, so you can put your credit card and you can buy a bigger instance or like a bigger database for you, and you can test, deploy, and we'll maintain that database for you. So we'll maintain all the cloud application behind that, so you can focus on your application and not on the database itself. The third version, the third group, is the enterprise version of the downloadable version, so the server version of our product. And this is mainly focused for big enterprises that have some sort of requirement that still demands them to be on their own cloud or on their own servers. So this is mainly a sales-led model for enterprise companies. We are talking about Fortune 100, we're talking about big banks, big telcos, and companies like that, that for some reason are not yet adopting the cloud and have the need to install that on their own servers. So for each particular offer, we have different personas, we have different teams, and we have different ways of thinking about them into our website. Next one. To simplify a little bit, let's group them into 2 main groups. So we have developers, that's our primary audience. We talk to developers because we're building a product for developers. And we have two big groups inside of the developers. We have people that are learning MongoDB, so people that are educating themselves on the technology, on the database, are starting to use like a side project or something like that. And we have developers that are actually evaluating MongoDB for an application that they're building commercially. So something that are working for a company and they're looking at opportunities of using MongoDB there. Parallel to that, we have decision makers that sometimes are technical, but sometimes are not technical, like CIOs, CEOs, that might be evaluating MongoDB to a broader scope at MongoDB before actually deciding to commit to buy a database like that. The needs, the challenges, the information that each one of them are looking is completely different. A developer that is learning will be looking at docs, documentation, will be looking at free tests, will be looking at the easiest versions of the database so they can kind of progress as they go. A CIO, a CXO would be looking at security features, at scalability features, as comparison to other companies and understanding which other companies are using MongoDB and why. So it's a complex web environment where we have to make decisions on the fly. What is the best path and what is the best journey based out of the data that we have and based out of the structure that we have for them. So how do we do that? So this is a model that we have been evolving with our partners. So Intercom, Clearbit, MagicDo, they have been super helpful on helping us bring a more sophisticated model to the table. So the traditional model that you would identify and classify users is based out of Clearbit review, giving you IP information. So you get basic information of that user. You would then get that information into Intercom and you would play and have your chats personalized. But we wanted to have something more sophisticated because for us, understanding the users and understanding their behaviors and putting them into the right journey is critical for our funnel. And it's critical for us to really kind of understand what the user needs and fulfill that need and not be noisy or salesy or sometimes kind of lose the customer because simply we are entering that journey in the wrong moment. So we start with the unknown users. They land on our website. We have no data available. And we still have a good amount of them that we simply don't have any data. It's just an anonymous user. We just have their IP and we don't have any other data. But for some of them, we're able to identify at least which company they're coming from. So with that, we get a lot of enriched information of like what is the company size, what is the industry, what is the type of interest that group of companies normally have. And then we start using this information to enrich and to decide which journeys we're going to put each of those customers. A second level to that, and this is something that is differentiated and quite challenging to do in the market, is that even before the person submits a form, we start gathering more information. So whenever you look at your form, you understand that a lot of people start typing your form, but they give up in the middle of it and then just go away. So we have the ability to detect as soon as someone starts typing their email, we are using the technology between Clearbit and between MagicDo in this case to really gather that intelligence and save that information and rescore the person in real time. So as you go through our product and as you go through our pages, we are scoring you multiple times as you go. So we start the first time we get some information about you, and then at any additional information that you give us, we rescore you again. And we rechange the journey based out of that. The first level is when we get your email, but then after you submit your email and you enter our database, we have the full access of our CRM and data warehouse data to enrich that information and really create a full profile of who you are. And then we can make the assumptions of what is the best path for you. So we use this data for a lot of very different use cases. And when we're talking about web personalization, it's a topic that we could be speaking like 5 hours out of it. And there's so many angles that you can look at. So first, we look at live chat engagement. So we want people to have a good experience when they are talking to us on the live chat. We use that to personalize the web experience itself. Add CTAs, remove CTAs, change pages, provide industry pages instead of like normal pages when we have the availability to do so. We make decisions of, do we want that person to engage with sales, or do we think this person should self-serve first start testing the product, and then later on, as they grow, our sales team would engage on that. And we also use this to evaluate the website itself, because if we understand which pages are driving people that have the best behavior, the best fit, the best demographics, not only from, let's say, a generic standpoint of like, oh, we brought more bigger companies, but because of the MadCuDo scores that we run at kind of visit time, we can really understand if that company is a good fit for us or not, based out of the machine learning models that we built with MadCuDo. So it's taking to the second step, that is not only looking at the firmographics of that company, looking at how that actually relates to the data and the conversion rates and the performance that we see for that particular group of companies or people. In this presentation, we're going to be focusing on the first use case, how we are using that data that, again, goes back to our data warehouse, and we use that for all those things, but how we do that on the live chat experience. So on the live chat experience, we think and we group customers into more or less 3 groups. So we have a big cohort of users that are interested in learning MongoDB. Like, we have a lot of people that we are referring to docs, referring to our community, or referring to our Atlas free product, so people can test, can iterate, and can learn. So we want to have an experience for them that is customized for that type of use case. We have a lot of people that we don't have data, or that we consider a lower value prospect. And why they're lower value prospects? Simply because we don't have the ability of having every single sales rep talking to every person that comes to our website. So we have to prioritize. So we may use MadCuDo scores to prioritize based on the capacity that we have on the sales team on that particular region, how many leads we are going to send to sales, or how many leads we're going to incentivize that conversation with sales, and how many leads we're just going to wait and see a little bit more data, a little bit more behavior before pushing them across. And then the third group is when we know that they are a high value prospect, we know who they are, we know the company, we know that that company is interesting for us. Maybe we are discussing a deal with them, or maybe they are on our pipeline, or maybe they are in a cohort of customers or like future customers that are interesting for us.
I know there's a question that I've heard a couple times, but actually is in the list of questions, and Marilyn is the one who asked that question. It's like there could be a ton of permutations, which could mean like a ton of like personalization. It can become very heavy. Is that what you recommend, or like how do you make sure it's not time consuming? I think what I like about this slide is you're presenting kind of like 3 big groups that were identified, but obviously I guess with Mongo, you could go like super deep into enterprise decision maker, business decision maker, technical decision maker. Maybe if you want to touch a tiny bit on that.
Yeah, my suggestion is always start small and build it up. And start with data that you have certainty. So start with data that you know will convert, and there are users that you can prove your case. So then whenever you are building your personalization framework and you are expanding the efforts around that, you build up your case. So it's not something that you are testing random ideas here and there. You have a case that you go towards. At MongoDB, we divide this into some areas. So we have a team that is focused on web experimentation, changing the pages itself and changing the experience there. We have teams that are focused on live chat. We have teams that are focused on understanding the journey between the website and the product. So obviously, we have a little bit more space to play. But my suggestion is start small, start with things that are certain for you, and start with the users you have data. There will be always many users that you don't have data. Create a good standard path for them and optimize that path as a group. Only separate a new cohort or a new group when you have data and you have insights that you can actually build an experience that matters for them, an experience that is different for them. So for example, in our case, the unknown data or low value prospect will be for many companies very close to what is interest on learning MongoDB, because we don't have a lot of data, because they come sometimes with no email addresses or social email addresses, but we have the ability to understand some of the behaviors that they have. So if they are starting their path from our docs or from our university, we know that the angle that they started is from a learning angle, is learning the language. So we can make some assumptions based out of that. Again, don't overcomplicate. This is very easy to overcomplicate. Don't do that, because you end up losing a lot of time building the model instead of trying to optimize the key points of it. Speaking a little bit about how we do this, and this is just like a more general framework of how we do it. So first step, you need to have your tech in place. You need to identify your users. We use Clearbit Review to do that. We use Clearbit, and we use other vendors, other data vendors as well, to bring more data. Every data vendor that we see around that brings interesting data, we want it. We have the ability to buy it, but maybe if you are in a smaller startup, start with one, pick one, go with that. Then we use Magic Do to help us classify those customers. So divide who is good, who is bad, who's ready to buy, who's not ready to buy. So we use our machine learning models to make that differentiation for us and really start helping us bucket those customers. Also, on top of that, we have intelligence that is coming from our CRM. So what are our target accounts? What are industries or companies that are already our customers, so we can further differentiate them into our flow. And then we apply, generally speaking, like 4 flows. So we have a flow for low prospects, and speaking specifically about live chat. So on the low prospects flow, we have a passive qualification bot. So we don't have the ability to speak with everyone that comes on our website, or to have a live agent available to speak with everyone that is there, or every single question that is showing up there. So what we do is we let them come to us. So we let them open a question on Intercom or starting to talk to us. And then we have automated processes that help us gather the needed information that, one, informs the model back so we know who they are, so we keep personalizing the experience, but also allows us to understand what is the type of question and allows us to automate some of the answers. So things like, hey, I'm trying to understand this part of the code. We can use Intercom to have that being answered by a bot and then say, hey, here's our article on how to do that, or here is the documentation on how to learn this part of our product. So we use a lot of that. And I would say that's one of the biggest volumes that we have in terms of conversations. The second group is people that we identified that are high value prospects for us. So then we want to be proactive. We want to have engagements with that team, and we want to have our sales team actually reaching out and speaking to them. So we use what we call proactive sales bots, that are bots that pop up on the screen that kind of call their attention and kind of saying, hey, please talk to us. We want to hear from you. We want to have engagements with you. And then kind of the action after that is, or a live agent picks it up, or we offer the ability for you to book a meeting directly from the messenger. Third group, ABM accounts. Whenever I detect an ABM account on our website, my sales team loves it. I want to get them to the right sales rep as quickly as possible, and via meeting, via a live agent, via notification to our sales team. So those are the accounts that we know are important for us and that we have dedicated teams to work with them. So we try to be as fast as we can to get that conversation happening and with the right person inside of MongoDB. And then the last one is customers. They do have access to Intercom depending on their plan. They will have different SLAs, and we offer passive support for them, besides automated onboarding flows and things like that. But like from like a messenger standpoint, we're talking mainly about a passive support for them. So this is just some examples of our bots, of how those flows work. We iterate a lot on those bots. We iterate a lot on the type of messages, the auto replies, the kind of our knowledge base, so we can always learn and have the things ready for the users as they need. But the idea is that as we increment our ability to have data, we go from a generic, I don't really know what you are doing here, so can you please tell me? That's what you have on the left. And then whenever you start getting information and I start getting data saying, oh, this is a person that is interesting to talk to sales, I start offering options of like chatting now or booking a meeting for later. And that kind of integrates with my whole workflow that I have on the back. And then for ABM accounts or for companies that we know, We have a dedicated person to talk to you. I want to get you directly to that person and not to a generic support person or to a generic sales rep, because there's already an engagement and a knowledge that is created for them. That all sounds lovely, but it's hard. And it's hard to build that on a company of our size and our complexity, because there are a lot of things going on at MongoDB at the same time. So first of all, technical implementation, you need developers, you need people that can bridge the gap between the MarTech stack and the development of the website itself. So you can organize each one of those flows. And in our case, sometimes do sophisticated API calls and organizations so we can get out this data. Is it always necessary? No, because if you are, again, on a smaller startup, you may get much simpler solutions for you working well and working at the same scale. But for us, those things are needed because of our size. We have a lot of chats. We have a lot of visitors to our website. So volume management is something that is important for us. I cannot simply, for every single person that goes on my website, have a pop-up saying, hey, please talk to my sales team, because that would drive my sales team bananas with the volume that they would get. We have multiple sales teams in multiple regions. So we have challenges and complexities around routing and time zones and overlaps of teams and kind of how to work all of that. We have data sparsity. Like, we don't have data in many countries. We don't have data in many regions. We don't have kind of coverage as we wanted to. We always are working with our partners to increase that, but that's a challenge that we have to deal with. And sometimes we have to make guesses and we have to create flows that are just like the default or the failover if we don't get the data that we need. We have to do a lot of people management and a lot of training and organizing and convincing sales around using live chat, using lead scoring, understanding the value of the data we are providing, learning and having a feedback loop back from them on what is useful, what is not useful, what is working, what is not. So this is a very iterative approach that we have with the sales teams, with the sales leaders, or with the marketing leadership team to prove and to showcase how this process actually brings scale and help us deliver a better experience for our customers. On the right side, you have just some examples of like the types of flows of bots and messages that we have. This is just like a small sample of the logic that we have behind.
Maybe on the, I know that the sales process is always one that's tricky, especially as you said, right? Like for a high volume, I think it's something where people have a bit of a challenge adopting tools like, any kind of messenger bot. And so I'm curious, like, what your recommendation is for people out there. Is it, restrict a lot who you actually do the bot, who you pop the bot for? And in that restriction, do you prioritize? I love how here you have like things like, on the pricing page, we want to have a sales bot, which I think is like kind of makes sense, right? Like salespeople are happy when someone is on the pricing page asking for stuff. So there's a question like, do you prioritize having the pop-up on specific pages, or do you specify, or do you go for people where you have enough information and basically it's going to be a tiny portion? It could be only the ABM accounts that have been tagged before, so that you're 100% sure that the person who you might be interacting with, if they respond, is like very qualified?
We do a bit of both. Again, our scenario sometimes adds complexity to those things, but we do pick specific pages that we have a more proactive focus. Obviously, always using the MQDO scores as our thresholds. So that's how we control volume, is by tuning those volumes or tuning that threshold to really bring the best ones. But there are catch-alls. There are cases where if someone from ABM or from like a very high score company shows up in the website, no matter where they are, I want to be talking to them. So we have catch-alls rules that also try to bring those communications and those conversations happening in the website. Again, a lot of testing, a lot of iteration, a lot of discussion with our sales teams on the volumes that they can handle, and really understanding the conversations that are being useful. We got a lot of conversations, but sometimes they're just like, oh yeah, this is great, but I'm not ready for it. And then for the sales team, that is just a frustration because it's time that they have to consume, it's time that they have to use and speak with that. one other thing that we have as a flow as well is we use our support team to also cover some of those things. So if we don't have clarity that this person is using or is wanting a sales conversation, we might let them interact with support first and get some of their questions answered. And then if support detects that actually there is a sales interest or that they want to know more, then they would refer that person to a live chat agent from the sales team to actually engage with that. So it's a bit of both, but I would say, again, start simple. Start with popping up on your pricing page for everyone. See what that happens. See what that makes for you. Understand the conversations that are available. Then start applying filters from a firmographic standpoint, from like a page standpoint, to manage volume and to optimize your conversion rate. So it's a very iterative approach that you have to go through. Some of the results. So we did this, we have been doing this. So this is not something that dies and it's like a project that we did and we're done with it. We're always iterating on this. One of the key things is historically on our website, we had like the contact us form, the very old contact us form be one of the primary drivers for sales, for conversations, because people that are going through a form process and are submitting a form to you, they already have a very high intent. They want to talk to you. So from like a sales perspective, this is very interesting. They convert more. And with the changes that we have been doing around the personalization of the website and the live chat channel, we were able to have 3x more conversations with the sales team. And now it's the main source of hand raisers. So it's the main source of people reaching out to us on the sales side. And that made us even have like a dedicated SDR team to deal with chats. So that expanded our investment and expanded our focus to really have people always available to talk to us. Because we implemented the ability to book a meeting directly on the messenger, all the back and forth between, hey, I've submitted a form that will go to Salesforce, that will go to our marketing automation, we'll get someone to talk to you. That person will respond to an email saying, great, let's talk. Then they send an email with calendar invites and so on. Like all that went from like days to seconds, because now we allow the person to pick the right time that we already have available for them directly into our messenger. So the conversation can start happening after that meeting or like in that meeting directly. And then because of this data infrastructure that we built, we are able to unlock more experimentation, more learnings on the website. So because we have even scores on anonymous users, we can understand the pages, we can understand how they behave, we can understand the types of personas that are in the website. And this helps us drive our website roadmap, our experimentation roadmap, and kind of understanding of which channels are performing or not. So kind of all this data is used across so many different use cases because it allows us to see what is actually happening on the website.
I think I really like on kind of the implication on a like people/process perspective of saying like you ended up having a dedicated SDR team. Maybe question for Tara, because I mean, this is like something that I hear a lot on the market where marketers are challenged in figuring out how to get sales teams to adopt the chat. So I'm wondering, like, do you see people and do you recommend that people basically maybe run this initially within marketing of saying, hey, in marketing, we're going to have one dedicated person to make sure they man the chat. And whenever there's an opportunity, they do the handover, which is essentially what Mongo is doing now is like initially support would be able to do that. Like, is that a good starting point to make sure you don't like, you know, have to face the initial friction of sales saying, well, you know, like we're already super busy. We don't have time to deal with like customer support questions.
It's a great question, Francis. And it can be a good strategy to start with either your marketing or support teams as that front line of real person validation. But more important than that is the education piece of communicating both what the opportunity is and how you're going to segment and filter leads to the sales team. So what Gabriel is describing of, you know, start small and experiment and learn from your visitors over time. At Intercom, we've built for our customers different templates that help you leverage a mix of the self-serve kind of bot flows that allow visitors to express their intent and needs and give you that qualification data, paired with the flows where you do have that intelligence from in our case, from Clearbit, MadKudu, et cetera, and allow you to also like match to their target accounts. And then the third one too is where you have more of the kind of unknowns. And if you're setting up the initial flows so that you can filter and deliver in real time a majority of their target accounts who are visiting, that helps build the trust. And so while there is always a bucket of additional unknown prospects that start to have indicators of higher intent and that you want the sales team to trust and engage with and kind of, you know, learn how to message with them over chat and build that into their sales process. What we've found is doing a little bit of that setup work so that when you're delivering those leads, some of them are recognizable and they're already associating with like, this is actually a good use of my time. These are the accounts I'm trying to speak to. For smaller companies where you might not have as many leads, it's less of a problem, I think. And where we're seeing some hesitation is for those companies that are in a good position where they've got a lot of prospects in their pipeline. And in those cases, then it's monitoring what Gabriel's been describing, like which ones actually are valuable to your business that you do want to pass over to the sales team, versus which ones are better suited towards nurture sequences and self-serving resources. So it's not a black and white answer. I think the most common one is actually investing more time in that education and working with the teams to make sure that you are bringing them the high value prospects. But the other one too is asking them to experiment a little bit. And most cases we're finding the teams are open to that. They want to grow their pipeline. But if not, a good stopgap can be to route those conversations first to someone on marketing that can then qualify a little bit further, lightweight, and pass over to sales when it makes sense. Or a lot of teams actually also have that built into their support workflows. I know at Intercom, we send things back and forth between our sales and support reps regularly. And it's a really powerful dynamic that helps us support the user needs at those different stages in their life cycle. And so I think it's a good call out that is one way that you can help solve for it, is to leverage the different teams.
Makes sense. Sweet. Well, I think that covers pretty much what we had for today. So I know there's a couple questions in the chat that might make sense to address. I think there's one that I find particularly interesting, maybe for Gabriel, right? It's like when you're trying to get executive buy-in, and so I think it's similar to the question we just answered, like how do you get like this, not just like sales buy-in, but just like overall buy-in? How do you talk about the ROI? Because there's always like one thing, which is, well, are we basically just attributing one step ahead of the demo request, and now the chat is basically capturing what used to be captured by a contact us form? Like how essentially, do you like pitch internally going down initiative that is like fairly costly, of like going into like Clearbit, MadKudu, Intercom, and like taking time away from reps to actually man the chat?
I think it depends on scenario, if you're trying to sell having a chat or not, or if you're trying to sell expanding that chat. So in MongoDB, for example, we have had the chat for a while. So the pitch that we did, or like the process that we went through, was actually to expand its usage. And the way that we did that and we proved the case was, okay, start running pilots of like, okay, we're going to turn on a bot and see what happens in alignment with the person that is going to receive it. So then we did a pilot for 1, 2, 3 weeks. Oh yeah, great. We're having great conversations. It's working. Oh, it's not working. So it was a very collaborative process. In this case, we didn't have to prove the ROI in advance because the tool was already in place. So the cost was already in place. So for us, was just expanding and kind of enhancing the use case of that same tool. I think what was interesting to see is as we started going through the process of the pilot, the data started showing up good results. And because of that, we got, let's say, asked to speed up the process and to enhance and to do more. And then naturally, the sales team started asking for more chats because they're working, because they're interesting. Oh, they're just good leads. And then naturally, we were expanding on the marketing side as well. It's always a balance, because if we expand too much, then lead quality goes down. So we always have to balance that. But I think we all believe that having a live person talking to someone, it's a better experience than simply a form that you submit, that you have no context, and then you hope that one day we'll reach back to you. So that belief was already in place. So we didn't have to sell that idea. What I think is probably the hardest part for some more like traditional sales teams and more like traditional companies.
I think, Gabriel, you actually did a nice job kind of articulating how you can start with an experiment. And so, Francis, to your earlier question, if you find those partners across sales and marketing who are eager to experiment and believe in the potential, that's a great way to both start the implementation, get some data, validate your results before you start scaling. And it's something that, you know, we found to be successful at Intercom and a lot of our customer teams, because once you start trying that, the sales reps start to understand I can actually have multiple chat conversations at one time. And so while it may feel like extra work, it actually opens up new possibilities for efficiency. And then those realizations from a manager and an executive level start to filter into how they're, you know, in designing their team, how much headcount they need. And so it can be a growth lever as well as kind of a cost control lever. And so you can build out the business case with those two tracks in mind.
Makes sense. Another question, there's a couple questions that we will follow up on that are, I think, more tactical. Like there's some stuff around like the impact of working from home on Clearbit Reveal. I think we can take those offline. I even think that there was like a blog article that I wrote, but there's this one question I think is really interesting about does having like self-serve conversions make people more likely to buy, or like how to think about this? I think there was like a really great experience that Clearbit is still running that we ran with a couple of customers of saying, you know, based on if we think you're a better fit for an enterprise journey versus a self-serve journey, what is the main CTA that we show? And we saw that there was a lift in both cases. So I think, at least from my perspective, but would love to hear other panelists' point of view, what we've seen is that just pushing people towards the ability to do self-serve transaction is not always the right solution. Even though we talk about consumerization of B2B, there's still a lot of value in having someone hold your hand through the procurement process, especially when procurement processes are more complex, and not everyone is willing to swipe the credit card. Even though, yeah, in the dev space, it's always a little bit different because like developers don't necessarily want to talk to people. But anyway, I'm curious to hear everyone's thoughts.
I can start on that one. For us, I would say that it's an interesting challenge because it depends a lot on the developer. It depends a lot on the company. So we have that balance based out of the actions that they are doing, but we always try to give them both options. So if they want to talk to sales, the path is clear. It's something that we are offering for them, but we let them self-serve as well, because we know that for a lot of cases, they're trying to get their mind into the buying moment and they're not there yet. So putting sales sometimes too early in the game, it's detrimental to the overall process. But we have a very technical product. So sometimes they need technical help to actually get things up and running. So we also are monitoring for the other case, where it's people that seem super interested, but is not doing key actions inside of the product that would, let's say that they are doing well in their process. So we have to balance those two angles there.
I think on the Intercom side, it's similar. We try to balance and always think about the visitor or user's needs and goals. And we actually have broken it down where different levels of our product are available via different purchasing capabilities. So for the core kind of basic Intercom offering, you can purchase through a self-serve flow because it is something that you can navigate on your own and get set up very quickly. Even in, some people are able to do it in half an hour and start seeing results. However, on our more advanced products that are really built for larger enterprises and that would have advanced implementation and security needs, those are the ones, Francis, where we make more of an effort to have the qualified prospects talk to our sales team, interact with not just sales professionals, but our more technical resources to help support them and accelerate that process. And so it does work really well in our experience, for businesses that have both functions, or just one or the other, because at the end of the day, as long as you're designing that to match what your customers need, whether it is something that they can get started self-serve, if that's possible, then absolutely let them buy and get going. But if it's more advanced and you've learned that it does require some more interaction, the sooner you can connect with them, build that relationship, and get them started will help you in that path as well.
I think probably one of the most common use cases of using Clearbit Reveal or an IP data source is to be able to differentiate your website to the right buyer journey, because absolutely you want to think about website visitor experience, but you've probably been doing this long enough where you know that based on certain criteria, you probably know better than the visitor does what path they want to take. And that doesn't necessarily mean hard stopping them from going down the self-serve route if you know that they are a better fit for enterprise or vice versa. But there are certainly ways that you can encourage them to take the path that you know will be best for them based on all the data that you've had from previous sales successes and losses.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know we're at time, so we'll conclude on this one. Hopefully that answered the question, but I definitely think, yeah, like dev products are very particular. And as Gabriel said, right, like people might want to like start with the product, and like devs want to play with it. And there's this whole idea of like, that's why they built the Atlas product, so that people can start using the product before bringing it into the to the enterprise. So there's an element of making sure that you let them try the product, but at the same time, you're educating them towards why the enterprise product is actually a great fit for their company, because it has like more stuff. But yeah, on that, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Tara, Ashley, and Gabriel for sharing all your knowledge and wisdom. Hopefully this was helpful. And yeah, we'll follow up with some of the questions that were posted that we didn't get a chance to answer. And we'll follow up on the chat, which will stay available after this event. But thanks again, everyone. And yeah, looking forward to our next session.
Thanks, Francis.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gabriel and Ashley.
Gabriel,
Thanks, everyone,
Tara.
for joining.
Thanks everyone who joins.